Night Flyers is a haunted house story on a starship. It's Psycho in space.
And to space we go. Great.
Night Flyers is like nothing you've seen before. It's exciting stuff.
I can't wait to actually see it come alive on the screen.
This was an extremely ambitious set to build. It's acres of spaceship.
Should be epic.
Oh, acres of epic. I can't handle it. We got to start the show.
Welcome, gum killers, cord shoes. Our mission is to report the intel from the front line of the cord-cutting revolution so you, my friends, have the information you need to be able to track down the shows you want and spy them. We may have Carmen Sandiego news later in the show. I'm Tom Merritt.
Hey, I'm Brian Brushwood, but more importantly, those heartfelt words from people who definitely believed what they were saying while they were saying it come to us from the promo from Sci-Fi's Night Flyers, a George R.R. Martin property coming up. Tom, did you ever read any of the Night Flyers?
I have not.
Yeah.
They come highly recommended, though, I hear.
Yeah, I was really thinking that the Wild Cards would be the George R.R. Martin property that would be.
And that's being developed,
yeah,
apparently. So Night Flyers just made it to the screen first.
Yeah. Well, from what I hear, it's Psycho in space. It's
that's what they said in this teaser.
But hey, man, I'm not going to divulge my sources. I just heard from a dear friend, person to person, that it's like Psycho in space.
No, I love that all the stories about this said Night Flyers is Psycho in space. And when you watch it, it looks like Alien to me, but they say at one point it's like Psycho in space. In fact, I think George R. R. Martin says it. So therefore, that's what you lead with in the headline.
That's got to be
We should get a third-party opinion on this, though.
Yeah, well, too bad. It's only you and me, and there's nobody else. Maybe Bryce, but he only barely counts.
No, Bryce counts fully. But you know who also counts fully and is a surprise guest, Brian?
What?
Scott Johnson's with us today.
Oh!
Hey, everything counts in large amounts, I was told.
We're one of those surprise reality shows. This is amazing.
There you go. Yeah. Hey, speaking of things that count in large amounts, I think everything George R. R. Martin has ever done will eventually get developed for something because everyone sees money when they think of him. So I expect that even the crappy stuff will end up making it. But I'm cool with Psycho in space. Space showers are cool. I'm into it.
Eventually, I'd like to believe that the letter that a very young George R. R. Martin wrote to Marvel, to the Bullpen Bulletin, will show up and become a property on HBO.
It'll be dramatized into a miniseries starring Scott Johnson. All right. Well, that leaves us to talk about cable companies. Poor cable companies. We know their subscribers are dwindling. What are they going to do? We will tell you in the primary target. Don't worry about the cable companies. They've figured it out. Monopolies. A report from Leichtman Research shows the cable companies are extending their dominance in the ISP market. We've always said, well, cable companies are also ISPs. They can make money off people that way. Cable companies added 83% of all net broadband subscribers last quarter. Cable added 2.7 million broadband subscribers in 2017 in the U.S., while telcos, AT&T, Frontier, Verizon, lost 625,000 internet subscribers. Let that one sink in. No cable companies listed a loss of subscribers. If you go company by company, AT&T did all right. They gained subscribers. Cincinnati Bell it was the other telco that actually gained subscribers. But overall, telcos lost subscribers and cable companies gained them. So there are some people saying, well, hold on. How's this cord cutting thing going to work if the cable companies have a stranglehold over internet service in some markets? Now, the way this could play out is Austin, Texas, Brian. Like, you live in the laboratory for how this should work.
Well, yes, insofar as I have, I want to say like 3 solid choices and like 7 or 8 sketchy choices as far as broadband. And we're talking about everything from over-the-air antennas to satellite to to fiber optic. I have multiple fiber optic providers here in my area, and I'm not pretending like this is the way it is for everybody. People write in and they complain that I only have one option and it's a sucky option. That's the reason I want the government to fix all this. I don't blame you for feeling that way. However, sitting over here in the future, it's pretty great. It's pretty great. And the longer I extend my mind into what is possible, the more obvious it becomes that 5-10 years from now, nobody's going to be laying cable. That's going to be insane. Everything's going to be wireless. It's going to be 5G, 6G. It's going to be 12G. They're all the G's. I want so many G's, you're not going to believe it.
So that's your alternative. That's your potential alternatives. 5G service is going to deliver high speed, low latency broadband, and there are different flavors of it. There's 5G that'll be used on your mobile phone, but there's also a fixed 5G that can be used to beam service more directly. There's also Google Fiber, which actually is playing around with wireless. They sort of paused their rollouts. One of the reasons Austin is such a beneficiary of competition is because Google came in, and that kind of spurred AT&T to roll out their fiber program there. AT&T, one of the few rolling out fiber anywhere, though they're not rolling it out very many places. Verizon paused and even sold off a bunch of its fiber. So yeah, I mean, Brian, it looks like what you're saying is right, which is everybody is positioning themselves for wireless. And in the meantime, we've kind of got this situation where not much is being rolled out of the U.S. for the moment.
And keep in mind, this is without dipping into the highly speculative areas of like what SpaceX is poised to do. SpaceX is about to cut the cost of getting to orbit to super cheap, and they're talking about doing low Earth, like just a giant mesh of satellites swinging around the whole planet.
Yeah, they're not the only ones. A bunch of people are looking at that. So one of them, if it's not SpaceX, maybe somebody else's idea will make that work. And be able to use SpaceX to get up there because it's cheap.
Scott, you're a bitter, crusty man. What say you?
Well, that's my flavor. So here's the deal here. We had Google Fiber heading our direction at lightning speed. They were about to expand, and they did so here to Salt Lake City. We were one of the initial cities that were mentioned, and they built it out and built it out and built it out. And then they suddenly, Tom mentioned the pause, they suddenly stopped 5 blocks north of me. Ooh. All right. So super pissed. I wanted that thing to keep coming. Apparently it still is. This pause was meant as a pause, and there's supposed to be movement in that regard. But what that did is it seems to have spurred a lot of really competitive movement from Comcast, which is the other big booger in town here. Comcast generally is well thought of in the Salt Lake area. They've done a pretty good job. We don't have the nightmare stories that the coastals seem to have with it. They've done pretty well for me, and I just got gigabit service from them, which they just rolled out 4 or 5 months ago. So they seem to be poised to say, all right, Google, show us what you've got. We've got a pretty competitive alternative, and it pairs well with our TV services and other things. So bring it. So my hope is that Google is still bringing it, because outside of those two options, if they weren't here, even though we're piped for fiber here, my only option was, a decent DSL, but nothing more than that. So very happy with the gigabit service so far. Love it if Google got finished and pushed their way at least to my street, and then stop again if you want. I don't care.
So the headline says the cable industry is quietly securing a massive monopoly over American broadband. How much of that do you think is the actions that they're taking to solidify and their positioning as a dominant force? How much of it is just a limitation of the telcos just they drew a bad card, that their cable wire was thinner than the coax cable wire, and therefore they couldn't achieve the same speeds or whatever?
No, it's not that at all. Technologically, there's no reason that the telcos couldn't be continuing to compete. The telcos chose not to compete. For instance, here in Los Angeles, I moved in here in 2013, and I could get either DSL or cable or fiber from Verizon. It's now Frontier. Fiber was the fastest I could get, 300 megabits per second. It's now available for 500 megabits per second, but Frontier makes you call them if you want that and request it specifically for some reason. They don't actually sell it through their site. And Spectrum, the cable company, has increased its offering to 300 megabits per second so that it is close. This is what I think my neighborhood is actually fairly typical, which is you had a thing and it hasn't changed. It hasn't changed. My offerings haven't changed in 5 years. They've only been able to up the speeds through technology and better modems, et cetera, but they haven't changed the actual offerings in my neighborhood in 5 years. You guys got gigabit. You both have gigabit. I can't get gigabit. I've been here for 5 years on 300 megabits per second, mind you. I'm not complaining too much, but it is unfathomable to me that I can't get gigabit. And the reasons are very complex, but one of the reasons is telcos said, we don't have a way to subsidize those lines, so we're not going to spend money continuing to squeeze more bandwidth out of DSL, which they could have. We're not going to continue to roll out fiber, although AT&T has done that. So that's one of the reasons they're still growing. Instead, they decided to shift towards other businesses, one of them being wireless, betting that eventually that would make more sense, like you're saying, Brian, to be able to just put up some poles and more easily roll out high broadband. In the meantime, here in the U.S., and granted, I know this is a very U.S.-specific topic we're talking about, there's a lot of places that are just stuck in time for the time being.
So do you feel like in general we are seeing the doom and gloom scenario come to pass, or do you feel like this is a temporary pause before a brave new world?
I mean, I don't think it's either. This is what happens when you have a really high cost infrastructure combined with companies that received governmental favors to be able to entrench themselves and benefit from regulations that keep other people from rolling out infrastructure. It makes things take a long time to change. And so that's what we're seeing. Eventually, I don't know when, eventually, we're all going to see high-speed broadband, I think. There might be issues in rural areas, I get that, but generally urban areas are all going to see high-speed broadband. So the largest percentage of the U.S. will have it. It's going to be spotty, it's going to be uneven, and it's going to be painful for a while as the cable companies are able to exploit their entrenched position as long as they can and sort of try to compete by keeping people out as long as they can.
Yeah, that's the reason why my brother, who is, I have a Korean brother who spends a lot of time in Korea, comes back and forth. And he says that he can't understand why America is so slow to have great broadband. They have amazing broadband every time he goes back to Seoul. And I was trying to make the point that they didn't really, when they kind of started, that was their first real infrastructure. Like all of this infrastructure, laying fiber, laying pipe, doing all the things you got to do was not they didn't have to go through 100 years of copper and established protocol and established technology and kind of fight that fight. They could jump straight to the front of the line.
Yes, and yes, they didn't have the legacy of previous regulations and previous ways of setting things out to deal with. So they were able to start from scratch. Huge advantage. But what really changed in Korea was they said, look, you can't stop another company from using the right of ways to get to places. So nobody could say like, well, you can't use our poles. You have to call us if you want to move our lines. What the government did is said, we're going to make it really easy for everybody to lay fiber if they want to. Nobody can get in each other's way. And so you have apartment buildings with multiple fiber installations to them coming from multiple companies because they all just ran out there and started doing it. And part of the reason for that is, like you're saying, they didn't have the history of locking down monopolies that we had from the 70s and 80s.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. I know when I'm in over my depth. Magical free internet for everyone will be here soon. That's my prediction.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to affect the way cord cutting rolls out. The reason it's our primary target today is you got to have the good internet to get the good TV. And there's a chance that cable companies temporarily will use their market position to sort of, put the elbow down on competing services and maybe promote their own services. So you won't see the pure balance in the marketplace that you'll eventually see. It's just going to take a little longer. That's all.
And Tom, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like sometimes this stuff comes from directions we don't expect. Like we don't exactly always know when a disruption to an existing infrastructure or plan or idea, who it's going to come from and when it's going to come. Yeah. And that could be anything from, it looked like MySpace was going to be here forever. Oh, Facebook, what's this? Boom, done, dead. Same thing happens with mobile and portable video gaming. It just completely upended that industry. So sometimes it just kind of comes out of nowhere and it comes so fast that the existing leaders in that area don't have the wherewithal to respond or the flexibility to respond in a way that can truly combat it. And I feel like this is no different. I don't think the cable company should get too comfortable, because this stuff can come out of nowhere. It can come fast, and it can be so fast that Comcast and Turner and everybody else, or I guess Turner now is owned by Comcast, but whatever, whoever they are, they're not going to be able to respond as with the kind of liquidity they're going to need to maintain their position of power. So
I really like the sentiment that you're expressing, and I'm 100% on board insofar as we don't know where the strike from the side will come from, but we know that there is one coming, right? And you don't need to know where the surprises are going to come from to bet on some kind of surprise.
Yeah. The gut reaction, right, from the host of the Daily Tech News Show here is, it's going to be 5G, guys. There's nothing else out there that really is promising. It's going to be 5G, and 5G is going to be controlled by the big players, and they're all partnered up with, except what Scott just said is, no, the whole point is the surprise comes because you don't see it coming, right? So who knows what that's going to be? Maybe it'll be somebody making new use of 5G. Maybe it'll be space-based satellites. Maybe it'll be some new mesh technology. Who knows?
Yeah. Sometimes they just do it better. Like, I hate to bring video games up as an example of this, but those PUBG guys didn't see Fortnite coming like that. It just completely upended their world. And the same thing happens in all kinds of other technologies and stuff. So I'm not saying it's going to come from some dude in his backyard. It may have to come.
Although it may. Think about this. Like, and this is wild speculation. Please don't think that I actually believe this is what's going to happen. But it's like, it could be as surprising as somebody taking all of the spare bandwidth from all of the old telcos and putting up wireless repeaters that, like Tom was saying, build a mesh network, and all of a sudden you got this crowdsourced, BitTorrent based whatever thing.
White space occupying, Who knows? What we do know, though, is we survive on your support like vampires, Brian.
Yes. Okay. I wasn't going to bring it up, but you know what? The other day, Tom and I were hanging out in this old Victorian pub, and this guy says, "Hello, I am Tom Internet." And we're like, well, that's a weird accent. And he goes, "Blah," and then he bit us both. And we're like, well, maybe we'll get tested for rabies. And it turns out, bad news, guys. We're vampires, and we don't worry, we don't suck your blood for sustenance. We suck your wallets for money sentence.
This is not a good sell.
No, it's a great sell. It's a great sell. We never go out during the daytime. We can be killed with a stake in the heart, but most importantly, we need your money to survive.
Yes, but like Lestat, we will only survive on the money we can get from rats, because we don't like killing humans. Thank goodness for Patreon, which allows you to make the choice to support the show. So sit there and think, do we want Tom and Brian to become desiccated and unable to do the show, or would we like to give them $1?
It sounded an awful lot like you called our audience rats that we can sustain ourselves.
You just said you were sucking them dry through their wallet. Like
okay, that just makes me a Wall Street entrepreneur. That's different from a rat-eating killer.
Somehow that's better. No, what we're saying is Brian and I will not be able to get up out of our gravesite beds unless you give us $1. So please support us at patreon.com/Cordkillers.
And you know what? When you do, make sure to use promo code BLAH.
And that'll really confuse Patreon, but it'll probably still go through.
All right. We'll love it.
Let's talk about how to watch. So movie theaters are becoming a little cord-cutting service battleground. YouTube Red is going to premiere its new movies in theaters. They're going to give theaters an exclusive run. I could not find if they're giving the standard 90 days or if this is going to be in indie theaters, but YouTube Red will premiere Vulture Club, starring Susan Sarandon, directed by Iranian-American Mariam Keshawars, in theaters. It's about an ER nurse whose journalist son has been taken hostage. They will also premiere Bodied, a battle rap satire we've talked about before on the show, produced by Eminem. That one premiered at Sundance already. That one will go into theaters first, then to YouTube Red. So YouTube Red trying to make sure that they can get award nominations, but also it sounds like they're playing nice with theaters. On the other spectrum, of course, is Netflix, which never makes any compromise. They'll put a movie in theater to get like Oscar status, but that's it. They always do day and date release. Starting with this year's Cannes Film Festival, films screened in competition will need to have a French theatrical release. Netflix can't release its films in French theaters and still do day and date release because there are French laws against that. It says if you put a film in the theater, you can't make it available for months. I think it's actually more than a year before you can make it available on demand. So Netflix doesn't release its movies in theaters in France, and therefore, under these new Cannes film rules, will not be eligible for the Palme d'Or, which is, of course, the most prestigious award at Cannes. They could still show their films at Cannes. Their films will be accepted for showings. They just can't win the Palme d'Or.
This seems like an astonishingly bad decision on the part of Cannes. It makes them look petty. It takes them from the place, because if they are truly a film festival that celebrates artistic integrity and diversity, then they shouldn't be obsessed about who released what film in what time at what place and how much money was made, XYZ. And instead, by tipping their hand this way, I think it makes them look petty, because in general, I think people love Netflix. And more importantly, I think Netflix makes good art. And if what you're supporting is good art, then maybe not, write a rule just to screw over Netflix.
Are you saying that the French cinema world might be a little uppity? Is that what you're telling me?
Well, I know it's controversial, Scott, but I stand behind it.
Big shocker. I've been thinking a lot about this the last couple of days, so I'm glad this whole thing came up. Spielberg's out there saying, I don't think Netflix films should be eligible for awards, and big names out there are kind of fighting this. And it started to bring up a more esoteric conversation about what are movies and how are we getting them, and what does distribution matter? If it's the art that matters, then who cares how you get it? Shouldn't matter if I can watch it on a phone, a huge screen with hundreds of people, or something in between. The content is the content. And I think we are transitioning into a new era of thinking about this sort of thing. It isn't about, is it in the cinema, or is it at home, or is it anywhere? It's about what are you watching? Who created it? Is it good? Is it relevant to today's society? Does it make cultural risks that matter on an artistic level? Does it make us ask new questions? Like, is that what we're doing? Or are we worried about, did this show up in movie theaters, at least on the coast, so then now it's eligible for this or that? Or did it at least make it through French cinemas so that it then can be considered for Cannes, recommendations and or awards? I'm with you 100% on this. I think that stuff is weird and silly, because movie theaters are nothing but distribution models that worked for the kinds of reasons that it worked when it worked. And we're moving away from that being a thing. It's still a cool thing to go see movies in theaters. It's not what I'm talking about. What I'm saying is putting a bunch of people in a room and showing it on one screen was the only way that you could have that stuff back in the day. Now we have other ways to do it. Who cares? It's the content that should matter in this case.
I get that they need a weed out factor, right? I get that a film festival says, look, we can't just take, every home VHS created movie and look at it to decide if it has artistic merit. So we're going to make a rule that says it has to be accepted into a theater. Let the theatrical system do the weeding out for us. If it's good enough to get distribution, if it's good enough to get in a theater, then Cannes, which is not a film festival that's trying to get movies sold. It's a film festival, as Brian said, trying to support diversity and artistic merit in cinema, will then say, okay, now we'll consider it for the Cannes Film Festival. What they did, though, was they changed it to say, well, now it has to have a French theatrical release, which to me sounds like they really were just like, we don't like it that Netflix is in here. And the only way I disagree with you, Brian, is I don't think this is a big mistake for Cannes, because I don't think they care if they look petty to us. They're doing this to support their audience, which is the Steven Spielbergs of the world. It's the film directors who are upset about Netflix's day and date release schedule. And this is actually really smart, because it's going to make their audience super happy.
That's interesting. What do you think the odds are that they made this decision, made it publicly, solely with the intention of placating their base, with the full knowledge that in 4 years they're going to reverse it?
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they said, look, we may have to change this eventually, but let's do it now.
I think that this is like anything going down with your ship. And I'm not saying that the cinema world's about to go down and be awful and terrible and it's all going away. Maybe it is eventually, but guys like Spielberg sitting there with a straight face saying this crack me up, because these were the rebels of their time. These were guys pushing into areas that nobody else had before, and it seemed a little crazy. And he's been criticized his entire career of pushing into commercial areas that film hadn't previously, and thus changing the artistic hoo-ha of the entire business. He's taken that kind of criticism and taken it on the chin too many times to mention. So has George Lucas. So have many who I would consider huge pioneers of their day. And to see them on the other end of this and their scarves going, well, I don't know if it should be approved for it. Come on, guys. Seriously. Freaking get with the times. I get it.
Some of our best friends wear scarves, Scott.
But I'm just saying we are in a new world of distribution. It's as simple as that. So are the movies good or aren't they? Is Mudbound good? Damn right it is. Mudbound's good enough not only to get an Oscar nomination, but to suck me in on a Friday night on my TV with popcorn in my lap. And that's what movies are. So don't fight the future.
Well, okay, so
for Cannes to make right now, because people think of Netflix movies as Will Smith, Adam Sandler, right? When there are more Mudbounds, when there is a young film director who does make a movie for Netflix that is universally acclaimed by the critics of the film world, and it can't show at Cannes, that's when this changes, right? That's when people go, hey, you guys, these old rules that you passed way back in 2018 don't apply anymore.
I mean,
there's so much crap though in theaters. There's so much crap at the Cannes Film Festival. There's crap at Mid Sundance. Like I don't buy that. There's too much crap already. So they're already.
What don't you buy? I don't understand what you don't buy.
What?
What you said? I don't buy that. What don't you buy?
What I don't buy is that they think that we somehow need Netflix to be nothing but a stream.
No. That's not what I said. That's why I asked. What I'm saying is not that they think Netflix is worth anything. It will happen. They'll change their mind when we get to the point that Netflix has made something so universally acclaimed that they can't help but go, crap. Okay, I guess we have to let them in now, right? It's not that they're saying Netflix has to do it. They're not saying anything about that.
By the way, we're not far from that. I thought Okja was a fantastic movie. That if it just had a little bit more universal acclaim, could have been exactly the test case you were talking about, Tom.
And it was in Cannes last year, and people booed the Netflix logo but loved the movie. So yeah, so it's a very good example.
Sure.
Whatever. They take poops on their beaches. They have signs up at Cannes saying, stop pooping on the beaches. There. Dude. That's right. I called you out, Cannes.
You know that it's the Americans coming to the film festival.
No, it's definitely not. Because if it was, they would have written them in English. That was French as hell.
Mel Gibson. All Mel Gibson. It's just him. The sign should say, Mel Gibson, please stop pooping on our
Mel Gibson, s'il vous plaît. Yeah. All right. Let's talk about what to watch in Under Surveillance.
It's all about location. Under Surveillance.
Maybe this is the movie. The first trailer for The Titan, starring Taylor Schilling and Sam Worthington in a post-nuclear resource-constrained world at an off-the-grid military base looking for a new home for humanity, arrives on Netflix March 30th.
All in.
Yeah?
Yep. Oh, yeah. Heck yeah,
are you all in?
I don't even care if you make bad sci-fi for Netflix. Just make more sci-fi for Netflix. I'm thrilled about any of this stuff coming.
You know what? I had a whole counter argument and you just diffused it. Okay, go ahead. Yeah, well done. Yeah, I agree. I agree.
It's not going to. It might not be good. Oh, you just said not good.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying it's
this looks. This looks interesting.
I don't think there's any indication that it'll be bad. From what I've seen, it looks like it might be quite good. But
well, it just sounds like the setup is very familiar, and I'm wondering how much of the same we want. But as you put out, like if you want the cream to rise to the crop, you got to have competition to have the survival of the fittest.
Yeah.
There's a little movie called Deadpool 2 coming out, and it got its trailer last week. Arrives in theaters on May 18th.
Did I hear right, Bryce? Did you say that? Maybe I heard it somewhere else, but I heard that that this was testing better than the first one now after the reshoots and the fixes and the what's not.
Yeah, the thing that I heard was that it was the Deadpool 1 scored 91 in early tests, and now some of the later cuts for Deadpool 2 have hit 94 in these tests. Very scientific,
super scientific
screener test.
The numbers larger than other numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then again, Guardians of the Galaxy 2 had 99. Or perfect
this is
100.
Sony, right?
Yes.
No, Fox.
So, no, this is Fox.
It's Fox.
Fox.
Okay.
Fox.
It's Fox. Even so, I love that the trailers just say Marvel, basically. They just throw Marvel right in your face. They're like, the studios aren't trying to claim these things anymore. They're like, oh, no, we say Marvel because people like Marvel.
Yeah, dude.
Well, even if they don't want to, they're doing that because and I'm not saying they don't want to. I have no idea. But and also this deal going through where Disney buys Fox is maybe part of this. But it sells to put, if your stuff's Marvel, freaking plaster it all over that thing. There's zero bad side to that, I don't think.
Yeah, well, and it used to be the opposite. It used to be Sony and Fox were very resistant to be associated with Disney's studio. They wanted to have their own brand associated with it. So.
Well, this Red Band trailer definitely distances itself from anything Disney would put out. So,
no. I meant Disney's
Looks
Marvel,
great.
not Disney.
I can't
Disney.
wait.
Yeah.
Totally stoked.
It's a totally different thing. HBO is going to air its film adaptation of Fahrenheit 451, starring Michael B. Jordan, on May 19th. This is HBO doing a theater-like movie on the service.
I don't know, Tom. Can I confess that I was never terribly enamored of the book or of any adaptation of the book?
Shocking. Brian, why do you hate Ray Bradbury?
You know, I loves me some Ray Bradbury, but I'll put any of the Martian Chronicles before any of this. I don't know. It's just such a trite cliche thing. And now it might be that they're able to evolve the sentiment of it to a social media aware universe, right? But I am not optimistic. It just sounds like books bad. Save the books. Oh, wait.
Killmonger wants to save the books.
Yeah.
That kid from Friday Night Lights wants to save the books. I'm reasonably excited about this only because I like when I don't want to get into any modern day conversation, but I like when modern day issues create or push art to the front, and art that is controversial in this way. Like a lot of 1984 talk these days, I'm not saying any of this stuff has equivalencies in real life or not. That's an argument for a different kind of show. But I do like when we start asking those questions because I think it makes for really interesting entertainment. That being said, I'm totally with Schwood. They need to take this into new territory.
Exactly. And I'll tell you how they could do it. I'll tell you how they could do it is they can make me feel like if they tell me a story that it's like, what has all your tweets gotten you? It's garbage. It's crap. It distracts you from actually getting real life done. And it's like, if you can convince me, like, yeah, burn it all. Burn all that social media down. It's all garbage. We're all just dogs barking in the night. Knock it off. And then then if you can make me identify with the villain in the deep, profound way, that would be amazing.
Well, the person who directed and co-wrote the film is Ramin Barani, who did 99 Houses, which I'm not familiar with. But the buzz is that it's a different take on the story. So I don't know what that take is, but that implies maybe there's hope that what you're saying might be the case.
Fingers crossed.
Monty Python and the Holy Grail, Monty Python's Life of Brian, the TV series Flying Circus, and several Monty Python live specials coming to Netflix in the UK April 15th and showing up on Netflix in the US later this year. This has been Monty Python, if you remember, I think was part of was it part of CISO, I think?
Yeah.
So I guess when CISO dissolved, those rights became available, and Acorn didn't get them. BBC didn't give them to its own US BritBox service. It's going to be on Netflix.
So this is all old catalog stuff that's being made available. Not
everything
any kind of,
but the meaning of life, basically.
Great, I guess.
It has moments. That fishy fish part's pretty good. It's all right.
Well, put it this way: there are a lot of people who still love rewatching this stuff, and so this is a valuable property for someone to get.
A lot of people.
That Netflix got it.
Do any of these people live in Los Angeles and have a beard and is a co-host on Cordkillers?
I don't rewatch them anymore, but someone fitting that description, living in San Francisco, owned all the VHS copies. So I don't know.
If you're telling, even if it was just Flying Circus, this would be great news for me. I love old Monty Python, so this is. To have them have a real home, I don't care what Netflix paid for it. These will be on repeat at my house.
Yeah, stop, Brian. I'm being repressed. Come and see the violence inherent in the system. Netflix going to release a 10-episode documentary on Formula One racing sometime in early 2019. They're going to get behind-the-scenes access in cooperation with Formula One. So more sportsy sports kind of stuff coming to Netflix.
Do you think, if you're going to bet, is this going to be more inward-facing or outward-facing content? Is this going to be for somebody to seduce them into Formula One racing, as some documentaries might be able to do, or is this going to be to appeal to those who already love it?
It sounds like this is going to be for fans. Like, we'll give you behind the scenes. And if I don't already care about Formula One, behind the scenes isn't going to bring me in. So
I completely agree. And you know what I was saying to my wife the other day? I think the big area of growth for Netflix is going to be in terms of original content, or at least buying others. And that is, they could demolish Food Network tomorrow if they just loaded that thing up with cool cooking shows. And they've already kind of done that recently with some new stuff. But I am telling you, commercial-free, well-made, well-shot cooking stuff, so good on Netflix. And my wife's like, I don't even want to watch Food Network anymore. These shows are so good. Wow. So I think they're missing an opportunity if they don't figure out a way to really double down on cooking stuff.
I think that they are.
You can make a strong case that they already are.
I watched Nailed It.
Yeah, we're going to talk about Nailed It in the email section. But
now I get a lot of recommendations for the Great British Bake Off and Mega Food, and there's another Netflix reality cooking show that they already have on the service and is old.
What's funny is I was going to use my old standby of saying, yeah, it only cost them $20 in a taco, but then I realized that's literally the budget for this. Yeah.
Finally, Deadline says Gina Rodriguez will be playing Carmen Sandiego in a live-action movie on Netflix. Rodriguez also already set to voice Sandiego in the animated reboot coming to Netflix next year. So they're going to do the animated version and then do a live-action version, like basically just owning the whole process for nostalgia.
Smart.
Someone's excited about that.
Yeah.
Not me.
That's not me, but I know lots of people love Carmen.
I've heard that those people are located in a country with a certain leaning tower. Do you know which country they're in, Tom?
San Francisco?
No. All right.
The United States?
that classic country of San Francisco.
I never really watched the show. So
All right.
Let's talk about what we are watching, though. Starting with you, Scott. What have you been filling up your eyeballs with?
Oh my gosh, you guys, I've gone a little bit wacko. I meant to put this in the notes, but I'll surprise you with them instead. So I don't know why I've been doing this, but I've been on kind of a tear, and I've gone all kinds of different directions. I'll just quickly rip through these. I watched 1922, the Stephen King adapted Netflix movie.
Wait, is that the one about the haunted room or whatnot?
No. It's about a farmer. Ends up, this isn't much of a spoiler, it happens early in the movie, kills his wife with his son's help because she's a horrible nag, and this is all set in like Depression era sort of farm kind of drama thing, and they end up throwing her down a well, and then nothing goes good after that. Nothing but terrible things sort of keep happening in their lives. It's got a supernatural aspect to it, but I just thought the acting and the tone and the look of this thing was really cool. I was very impressed. It might actually be my favorite King adaptation up to this point. I'm sure I'm thinking of something that, like, I like, It. I think that was good. I think the older stuff, like, I don't know. I can't think of one now.
The Running Man?
Yeah, well, like
The Shining?
The Shining's a great movie, but The Shining is not so much a Stephen King project as it was the director's project. I'm talking like pure weird short story. Bring that over. Let's make a movie about it. For whatever reason, this one really worked for me, so I liked it a lot. It's a Netflix original. Then I just finished this Jeremy Renner movie called Wind River. Or excuse me, was it Wild or Wind? Might be Wind. Anyway, that's awesome. Really, really good dark stuff. If you like things like The Killing, or you like, I don't know, like we're up in the mountains where nobody really is. Humanity's barely up here, but now there's a murder we got to solve, and we got to do it with the locals, kind of thing. That's a really cool movie. Kind of caught me off guard. Not a Netflix original, but is streaming on Netflix. And then the other one I'll mention is I watched Wild Wild Country, the documentary on Netflix. I think it's 6 parts about the 1980s cult group out there that set themselves up on an old ranch and disrupted that part of that state for a bunch of years. I never heard about any of this growing up, so it was news to me. and it was the most fascinating 6 episodes of a documentary I've seen since How to Make a Murder or Making a Murder or whatever that was called.
OJ Made in America?
Yeah, no, that was good too. That was really good. I'd call this on par with that, though. It was really interesting, especially because I knew nothing about it. I didn't know what had happened. And it takes so many weird turns and twists. They interview people they should have not been able to get to interview about that time. Fascinating. I cannot recommend Wild Wild Country enough. Duplass brothers are produced it, and it's fantastic. So anyway, that and a whole bunch of little random things, but mostly been focused on documentaries and movies lately. I've been on a real tear for that.
Right on.
Yeah.
Well, I actually watched the documentary they included on the Last Jedi bundle called The Director and the Jedi. And I got to say, it's one of the best bonus feature documentaries I've ever seen. It's 90 minutes. Like it's as long, almost as long as The Last Jedi itself. They really did a great job editing it and putting it together and capturing moments like you see, and I'm pretty sure it's not a setup, the moment that Rian Johnson tells Andy Serkis, just want you to know before you read the script, Snoke dies. Okay? Like he just out and out, you like see Andy Serkis's like reaction of surprise.
Wow.
You see the moment where he sits down with Mark Hamill and says, nobody knows this but me, Kathleen Kennedy, and one other person. Here's the name of the movie. It's going to be called The Last Jedi.
Wow.
And you see Mark Hamill like, oh my God, that's me. That's his honest reaction is, that's me. He's like, I'm glad I didn't know that before. It's too much pressure. And it's just a beautiful documentary. No matter what you think of the film, I think it's worth watching just to see behind the scenes of how a movie is made. They show a lot of how tired everyone is, but without it being like beating you over the head. Something that I don't see in a lot of these documentaries. Like, hey, you know what? This is really hard work that they're doing here. So
yeah.
I highly recommend that. Also watched Coco finally, which was fabulous. And season 1 of Atlanta, which I had started a while ago, but we finally finished it off this season. I'm very excited to get started on season 2, which is airing right now.
Right on. Yeah, I don't have much to add. I watched Isle of Dogs. We'll talk about that in spoiler in time. Of course, Deadwood 202. No counterpoint this week because the finale. God, I'm going to keep saying counterpoint. It's going to be counterpoint
for 2.5 months.
And Bryce is going to keep having a counterpoint.
That's right. It's going to be point counterpoint from now on. Although I have, with a little bit of extra bandwidth, I rewatched Thor Ragnarok, which just holds up so well. There's so much more to appreciate on your second, third, fourth viewing of it. And finally gotten back into watching John Oliver on HBO.
Oh, very nice.
All right,
One
Bryce.
quick note, I forgot to mention, I watched the Weiner documentary about Anthony Weiner. That thing is something, by the way.
What is that on?
It's on Hulu, and it's not a Hulu original, but it's streaming there. And I'd heard about it here and there in other places. I'm like, I got to watch that sometime. It's a piece of work, dude. You should see Weiner. And I don't mean that in any other way than Anthony Weiner documentary.
Yep.
All right, Bryce. On that note, what should we be on the lookout for?
Paul sent us along a pick today. He wrote, I have a recommendation for your What We're Watching segment, especially for Brian. Delt is a winner of the 2017 South by Southwest Audience Award for documentary feature on the life of Richard Turner. Turner now lives in my hometown of San Antonio, Texas, and performs regularly at the Buckhorn Saloon and Bar. As a proud San Antonian, I'm always thrilled to see my city on TV or any movie, and it was no different seeing scenes of Mr. Turner performing at the local Marriott River Center Hotel with the help of his son, Asa Spades Turner. I believe Brian would particularly enjoy this documentary about a legend in the magic world who is a 43-year-old member of the Magic Castle, 2-time nominee and 2015 winner of the Academy of Magical Arts, Close-Up Magician of the Year. Thank you for sending this along, Paul. Delt isn't streaming right now, but it is available on most major VOD rental and purchase sites. Do you know about Richard Turner, Brian?
I do, and I think you guys buried the lead. He's blind.
Yeah.
B-L-I-N-D, blind.
The trailer I'm watching the trailer as Bryce is playing it. They waited till the end of the trailer to say that he was blind.
Yeah, BTW also blind.
Spoiler.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have some reaction footage of the audience as they're saying it on here. When he's like, eventually people start to realize he's blind. And you see faces of people getting shocked.
I cannot wait to see this now. This sounds great.
So it's Delt, D-E-A-L-T.
Got something we should be on the lookout for? Email us cordkillers@gmail.com. Brian,
yes,
you have something to tell us?
Okay, fine. I'll tell you the truth. We're doing articles. You caught me. We're doing articles at themodernrogue.com every single weekday, and I wrote my first article. Some would say wrote. What you did is you copied somebody else's work, to which I say, yes, I did. I copied the letter that Teller wrote me 23 years ago. And that set me on the entire career path that I'm on to this very day. If you haven't read it, no matter what kind of creative you are, and all of us are creative to some degree, make sure to read this letter. An aspiring magician, Brian Brushwood, writes his hero in saucy form and gets the most epic 4.5-page essay on the nature of creativity and making whatever it is you want to do work. It's really, really great. Just go to themodernrogue.com, and I guarantee you're going to love it.
That sounds fantastic. Everybody should go read that. I have read that letter before you published it. You've shared it with me. I was lucky enough. It's really good. I'm so cool. It's so cool that you're sharing that with everybody else. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. You told this to me over lunch when you and your wife were in Salt Lake once, and I remember thinking that's the baddest ass story of all time. And how is this not like in the public domain? So you putting it out there is super cool.
It definitely is now. Please, please, please share it with everybody.
On to the front lines.
Front lines.
So MoviePass followed its controversial statements and then apologies last week with a limited time price drop. Nothing changes your mind like a price drop. Annual subscription dropped to $89.95 a year, which averages out to about $6.95 a month, plus a $6.55 processing fee.
Is it possible, gentlemen, that they're overcorrecting on the apology front here? Because like, I understand, like, you know, shareholders, assuming there are any, I don't know if they're privately held or not, like they want to see a correction and they want to see massive action taken to get them back on track. But this starts to feel over apologizing for what was clearly just misspeaking out of turn.
Well, I mean, I'm the one that linked it to their apology. MoviePass didn't say anything like that. I look at it as a distraction of like, man, people have been thinking about MoviePass as the people who follow you home. Let's change that story. We've got how many discounts in the line? Put this one out early. Done.
Yeah, Scott, what's your vibe?
I'm still on the fence as to whether this is a deal I want or not. It seems like it totally is. The problem is we live in a weird market. Like, we've got a very dominant theater chain here that is not AMC. There are AMC theaters here, but they are overshadowed by this huge chain that was created by the former, he's now deceased, but the owner of the Utah Jazz at the time, and he started this theater chain. And as a result, it's become very popular. They were the first to offer, in a lot of the country, in fact, offer reserved seating, and kind of were ahead of the curve in all of those ways. There's one literally down the street from me. It's so close. And that all being said, I just keep thinking, well, maybe they're going to do something, even though they're kind of just regional now. It'd
but
be
you
really
know,
cool
you
if
could
they
get
had some sort of
MoviePass and
hands
go to
this.
those theaters, right?
Right. And I'd love that. But
okay.
So part of me is like, well, I don't want to belly up the 89 and have to drive to, I don't know where the closest AMC theater is.
You don't
and
have to
not
know.
have the
MoviePass
assigned
is not
seating
associated
because
with
they don't have
AMC
it there yet, all that.
Yeah, MoviePass is independent of any chain. They very likely work at the one just down the street from you.
Well, what's probably going on then? Well, two things. One is I don't fully understand the program, obviously, but also I don't think they're doing it. If they'd have been doing it, well,
they can't
I need to
stop
check.
it.
If they're doing it, then I'm all in because this is stupid dumb.
It's not a partnership thing. It's a MasterCard. They give you a MasterCard.
They actually give you a functioning debit card that you could spend real money to buy real tickets at real theaters.
Then why do I remember this being somebody was saying they didn't want to do it and they weren't going to allow it? Why do I remember that?
AMC was trying to figure out how to block it. But they have had very little success at that.
Right.
And in fact, what's happened is MoviePass has done the opposite and started to delist AMC theaters because they can do it because they run the MasterCard.
Well, then my real answer is I think I'm going to get this service and I'll be picking it up.
Meanwhile, the New York Times says entertainment executives told it that Apple plans to roll out its new TV programming between March and summer 2019. Just around the corner, and then
another
a year from then.
of these stories.
Apple currently has a 40-person team working on Apple Worldwide Video. Apple has 12 TV projects in the work. Newsflash, Tom. Apple TV about to be a thing.
Still. Yeah, man. When I saw this was 2019, I was like, oh.
2019!
Do I like that I'm going to have to wait this long to get Brian's opinion on these 12 shows or not?
Yeah, you just resubscribed to a year of Brian grousing about a thing not being here. Congratulations.
Well, I wonder how many more of these leaks of the shows they've acquired we're going to get between now and then.
I mean, or how many of them will even be real? Maybe that's the new pilot program is you don't actually create content. You just leak a bunch of lies about what might be around the corner, and whichever ones get the most headlines, you're like, yeah, let's do that one.
9 of these are apparently greenlit for a whole series too, without even having to do pilots, which is crazy. Here's a crazier story, folks. Netflix is changing. You knew it was going to come. You knew it was going to happen. You're going to have to get comfortable with it. That's right. No more Gotham typeface. Instead, they've created their own Netflix Sans. The new typeface was developed along with designers Dalton Mag, and apparently it'll save Netflix millions of dollars in licensing fees because they had to pay a lot to use Gotham.
It's stupid that they didn't do it sooner, honestly. Like having to pay licensing fees for fonts that aren't covered under Creative Commons or other uses is ridiculous in these days anyway. I don't know why anyone does it. I took typography classes in college that made my head spin in terms of the business that is font licensing. So this is totally the right move for them. It's dumb wasted money. It's probably pocket change for them, but still they may as well have done it. It's fine.
Roku announced its new Roku channel that offers a free ad-supported VOD offering is set to go live this summer on select Samsung smart TVs. The platform's VOD service debuted last fall on Roku TVs and Roku players and features, quote, hundreds of movies and TV shows. Roku noted that the Roku channel's ad load per programming hour is about half as compared to traditional linear television.
Coming to Samsung. Cool. And Engadget has an article about Roku features that people might not be aware of, including the fact that you can set the replay button to always skip back 10 seconds and show captions. So kind of like the Apple TV does, what did he just say? You could make the rewind button actually be an even faster version of that on the Roku. Also, the apps that support Dial, which is pretty much Netflix and YouTube, there might be a few others out there, can cast to the Roku just like a Chromecast without needing a Chromecast. You can also change a setting to allow screen mirroring from Windows and Android using Miracast. I don't know how many of you will be excited by these, but there's some cool little features there.
I mean, every little incremental increase in quality that Roku get, I think all of us end up being the winners, right?
Yeah. And it's always cool to find these little hints articles. So bravo to Engadget for doing that. Let's get to the dispatches from the front. Scott writes, winter will not end in the Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania. I write to you. No, he says, a few months ago, I sent an email about making him rethink cord cutting. Here's an update. I went from the free version of Plex to Plex Pass because he's using OneDrive, so one less piece of equipment needed at home. I switched to DirecTV Now from PlayStation Vue. I joined for the affordable $35 a month, getting Viacom channels, some channels that are on the higher PS Vue tiers like Velocity and CW Live TV. I also got HBO for $5 and an Apple TV. So kudos to DirecTV Now's marketing. Of course, apparently DVR not as important, maybe because he has Plex. In my previous email, I said I wanted to put up an antenna because winter will not end here in Pennsylvania. I'll have to wait for better weather. I really hope it works. I want to try Plex Live TV. And one last thing was because Cordkillers has been helpful, not only for my cord cutting endeavors, but also for content discovery. I finally started supporting the show on Patreon.
Yeah.
Thank you, Scott.
Nicely done. Lori writes in saying, you guys have talked a lot about MoviePass on the show, so I thought this might be of interest to you. Apologies if you've already covered it. I'm deep in writing mode right now. Tom, you probably know who that is, so I'd had to cut back on my podcast listing, but Lori says, I've been a MoviePass subscriber for about 4 months, and I just haven't been using it. That's right, not even once a month. This morning, I decided to cancel and got a stern warning that I would not be able to resubscribe or register a new account for 9 months. What the heck is that about? I imagine it might have something to do with keeping people from just subscribing for Blockbuster and award seasons. But come on, MoviePass. I briefly considered my decision to cancel, then realized that is exactly what they want me to do. So buzz off, MP. I no longer want to do business with you. This seems like a reasonable play for somebody who's trying to craft a brand new market, right?
I think the reason they're doing this is they don't want people canceling because they know a cheaper version is there, right? Like they just went down to $6.95. If you're one of the people who signed up 4 months ago at like $9.95, then you might want to cancel, wait a month, and try to get the cheaper version. And they don't want to do that. I
also think Lori nailed it. It's award seasons and Blockbuster weekends. If you're just going to do this for the May through July, Blockbuster summer movie releases and then unsubscribe, that is a bad thing for MoviePass, especially at this low price point. So just like cable companies with their 2-year contracts and everybody else with trying to get contracts, it's more the rare thing to find somebody that lets you unsubscribe every month than it is to, get stuck with a longer contract. So I think she's exactly right as to why they're doing it. And I also don't really blame them for trying to have some way to stop people from doing that, because it's, month subscriptions are not what they want. They want people in for the long haul.
And the wait period, I think, is a holdover from when MoviePass originally launched, when it was a contract that you were signing up for. And if you tried to cut it, you would have a penalty for about that long. And so
okay.
I also think that it's not out of nowhere. This has been a thing with MoviePass. But I think just a lot of people find a huge value in it that most people don't even come up against it.
Matthew writes in, do you have a guide of streaming TV services and channels offered per? I am trying to find the best option that is closest to a regular cable satellite TV guide for my cord cutting needs. Thanks. Just bumped up my Patreon monthly donation. Keep up the great and entertaining work. Thanks, Matthew. The one we like is at Recode, and we'll have a link to that in the show notes. If you go to recode.net, you can find it. And there's also the one we mentioned not too long ago, Suppose.tv. Both of those let you go in and say, I need this channel, and this channel. Which service is offering?
Jim writes us saying, I don't think you've mentioned this before. Is there a way to take an over-the-air signal and send it via wireless? I have a Roku 3 box and I have a TCL Roku TV. I wanted the TCL Roku TV to receive the signal via wireless or some other way, since it's in my kitchen and it would be an effort to wire it. And this doesn't just need to pass the babysitter test. It only needs to pass my wife isn't tech savvy test. I thought this was a really interesting one. Tom, do you have a ready solution?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about Tableau before. Simple TV used to be a device you could get to do this. There's no way that I know of to just take the equipment you have and sort of send OT over the wire. You have to buy something to do it. But there are several ways to do it. Halpage has some. Tableau TV is one that we've talked about before. And what you do is you hook that up to your antenna. So you could hook it up in the same room that you have the TCL Roku TV, and you could either split the signal or have it run through the Roku as an app. And then it sends over the internet your over-the-air service to yourself. And so you could use the Roku app for Tableau TV to watch all your channels.
Wouldn't it be great, Tom, if we went back to the days? Do you remember the days when you would hook up your Atari 2600 or your Nintendo Entertainment System and you would tune it to channel 3 with a little thing plugged into the antenna? What if you did basically a little pirate HDTV transmission just strong enough to get through the house so that everything could get through to all the monitors?
Well, you could do it. I think I've done it. Now that I think about it, I had to be able to take something from a computer. Oh, how did I do this? But basically, you just mirror it. Use OBS or some other weird thing, and you end up mirroring content that's playing on the screen. You capture it. Getting it from a TV is maybe a little trickier, but I used to put a tape recorder next to my TV and record Letterman and then listen to it during lunch the next day. So, I mean, there's ways to not pirate, but pirate in the more fun sense.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, Matt writes in and says, my 9-year-old daughter wanted to watch one of her shows for the 10th time, so I suggested we pull up Netflix Kids to see if there was anything new. We started watching Nailed It, a show Bryce recently featured on the show. I found the host characters strange and forced and the premise very silly. The first competition was Sexy Vodka Pops. I believe they were vodka-tinged cake pops in the shape of lips and such. If the show has been even remotely entertaining to my daughter or myself up to that point, we may have kept watching. It wasn't, so we didn't. The show's rated PG, so that explains how it was in the kids section, and I don't think it should have been. It makes me wonder what other crap Netflix has in their kids curated section. Brian, would you have watched it with your kids?
Not only would I have, I did, and it was a total blast. Dude, Penny discovered Nailed It all on her own. I had been thinking in the back of my mind, like, oh, I got to tell Penny about Nailed It. That's going to be really fun. And I walked down and I was like, what are you watching? She's like, it's this cooking show. It's hilarious. Everyone screws everything up. It's adorable. And I was like, what's it called? She's like, Nailed It. I was like, yes, dude, Nailed It is great. And if you don't like it, then we could just disagree on that and still be friends.
I also take umbrage with the sexy cake pops. They weren't sexy. They were about love. One was like a finger and a wedding ring.
Now, to his actual concerns, like they did stuff with adult beverages, like a Harvey Wallbanger.
Oh, so there was a cocktails.
Correct. And if that's your dividing line or whatever, I'm going to respect your decision as a parent. Me, it's like
I won't. I think you should parent this way.
For me, I thought it was great. I thought the whole show was great. It's charming. It's fun. It's lighthearted. It really has a warts and all aesthetic to it. It's very human and very likable. I thought everything about it was charming.
And it's not mean.
No, it's definitely not mean. That's what I loved about it.
And Scott, I'm curious if your daughter was 9, which she hasn't been for a long time. Neither one of them have. What's your take on this?
I think it would be 100% fine. So I've only seen part of one episode, and I thought it was great. I want to see the rest of it. And in fact, the reason that we didn't finish through or rip through them is because we're going to save them from when we're all kind of in the room at the same time.
Oh, it's going to be. It is one of those shows that you could tell is a lot more fun when you have an audience there with you watching all at the same time.
I just think it's important to note that if I did have a 9-year-old daughter with me or something like that, I don't think, well, at least the relationship I had with my kids, I don't think them sitting watching this would have them at the end of it going, well, maybe I should underage drink. I don't think that's what the show would do.
And I think that is part of what I consider my job as a parent is to be a supervising steward of her transition into adulthood where, encountering stuff on the periphery, like, adult beverages and so on. It's like, let's have this conversation now while you're 14 and still listening to me rather than, when it's 17 and you don't want to hear anything I have to say.
Yeah,
all right, we got one last.
If you're throwing a blanket over the TV because of that, then you're making them curious to the point that they will underage drink. So talk to them, explain it, discuss it, decide what your dividing lines are. Like Brian said, I called you Justin, and you should do that. That's your prerogative as a parent. But these are teachable moments. Is a good way to put it.
Got one last parental email for you guys then. Jack says, hey, I have had an ongoing issue with Amazon Video and not being able to block my son from subscribing to channels like HBO and Stars. I have 2 sons with Kids Edition Fire tablets. I have parental lock for purchases on and found that there's no way from Amazon's side to block or have a prompt for password or PIN when you subscribe to channels. Now, I looked into this a little bit. The parental block he's talking about blocks the Amazon App Store, but apparently it doesn't apply to the in-app purchase on the Prime Video app. He says, in the last 6 months, I've had to call to get subscriptions to HBO and Stars reversed 20 to 30 times. One of my sons is autistic and doesn't quite understand that when he sees movies on Amazon's video app, it doesn't mean he can watch it. My only solution Amazon has given me is to remove my form of payment from the account altogether or uninstall the Prime Video app that my kids use quite often. Only solution that seems to work better for me is I changed to using only my Amex card on Amazon and called them to put a block for any attempt for a purchase of Amazon digital versus physical orders as they use different IDs. Has anyone else had this issue? Asks Jack.
Well, I can't speak to how many people have the issue. I guess partly because my kids who are technically savvy enough happen to be old enough to know the rules at this point. I worry about my 5-year-old as she gets more technically savvy. But in the meantime, I can also give you an alternate rather than using your Amex thing and calling about that. Another thing we've recommended on the Modern Rogue is if you use privacy.com. Privacy.com is basically you set up burner credit cards that you are able to set a fixed amount in there, and then once it's gone, they can't spend any more money. So if you set stuff up with the burner credit card, then there's no way for it to accidentally charge you when no matter who tries to sign up.
Yeah, my Visa card actually has that as one of its features that you can just do through the bank too. So you might want to check that out as well.
Some decent workarounds. My thing would be just to say I think Amazon has a loophole here that they should close. Like if they're actually concerned about parental controls, and if that matters to them, as they say it has, as many of the services claim, they should close this hole because it's a weird one. And I'm not even saying they're trying to do it not maliciously, but that, I think that's just a weird way this works out. Now that you can bring services in their service, I think that the right thing to do would be for them to expand those controls and figure out a way around it.
Yeah, it's a glaring problem on a Fire TV Kids edition.
Yeah.
Right? Like that should work the way the rest of the apps work. Yeah. Well, thank you, Scott Johnson, for joining us. As always, where can folks find more Scott Johnson?
Well, the pleasure is entirely mine. I should thank Tom, actually, because on our show, Current Geek, we watched the pilot for Breaking Bad to see how things were looking 10 years later, and ended up liking it so much I'm starting a rewatch of Breaking Bad at night. So if you'd like to check out Current Geek, the other show we do, that'd be great. We do it on Tuesdays, live right here on the Frog Pants Network at frogpants.tv is where you'll find it, or at frogpants.com. And if you're looking for something a little nerdier, which is hard to believe, Saturdays we do a live, this is brand new on the network, a live D&D show where we take characters through various adventures. We're having a fantastic time. It's called There Will Be Dungeons at therewillbedungeons.com. Of course, details on that are at the site as well. And for everything else, just follow me on Twitter and say hi. I'm over at Scott Johnson. It's always good to be on with you guys. Thanks for having me.
Heck yes. Thank you so much.
Thanks, man. Our website is cordkillers.com. Our email address is cordkillers@gmail.com. We're live on twitch.tv/Night Attack, which is also carried at diamondclub.tv, Mondays at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. Cut your cords next week. Be careful.
Hey guys, Brian and Tom here, and it's just the same old message at the end of the credits, just like always.
That's right, Brian. Nothing new here except your name showing up.
Oh my gosh,
because
I've got a name.
You just supported us on Patreon.
Yeah, all those $5 donors. Look at that. That's your name in pixels. We're gonna make you famous, kid. Put your name in pixels on the
classic
internet.
Names in there, but some of you are new. Some of you aren't there. It's sad. What can they do, Brian?
I mean, they could go to patreon.com/Cordkillers and pledge $5 an episode and be one of these amazing people, like this one.
Amazing.
Oh, look at that name right there.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.